Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spilling the Ink. And today I have my very dear actual friend, Laura Duerrwaechter, with us, and she is a retired pet sitter. So I have conned her into coming on the show to tell us all the pet sitting secrets. And we actually have real dogs right there that will probably disrupt this show at some point. So just for authenticity's sake. So thank you for coming on, Laura. And Laura is in disguise today.
I am celebrating Mardi Gras.
That's right. Yes, which is such a good thing.
I have never been to a Mardi Gras celebration outright, but I felt this was appropriate, and I brought a friend to greet everyone in celebration of Hug a Puppy Day. Are you ready?
Yes.
I didn't remember how long that was.
That's funny. Well, Chupacabra thought he would add to that. So, but yeah, it is Hug a Puppy Day, and that is one of the reasons why we do have an actual pet sitter, retired pet sitter, on board today. So first, and you actually write books about your experiences as well. So I do want to get into that as well. But first, let me ask you a little bit about pet sitting. Like,
okay,
how did you get into that? How long have you done that? I mean, it's kind of an interesting. Not a lot of people. I don't think I actually know another pet sitter.
I have a confession. I was a full-time secretary in the public schools, and I had 2 children, and over time they drove nuts. So I decided there must be another job that I could do in the summer to keep the kids at home and not in the back seat of my car. And I looked around my house, and I don't have many skills, but I did have 7 dogs and a cat at the time. And I thought, I know how to do animals. And so I created my own business, my own advertising, my own marketing. I put a flyer up in the bulletin board in the teacher's lounge at the school, and I was hired the next day. And I was actively pet sitting for 13 years.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I have no formal training, but I have a lifetime of putting up with their SHIT all the time.
I was going to say, if you had that many pets, that is kind of like formal training. I mean, there's no certificate that you want to share, but it's still training.
No. I did get a bond. I purchased what's called a dishonesty bond that covered me for $10,000 in any client's home. And I used to joke and say, well, if you come home and the grand piano was gone, it was me. But some people didn't find that to be humorous. And I was licensed with the various city municipalities. And I never, this was before digital social media. And it just was word of mouth. People know people. And most of those people know people with animals.
Yeah.
And yep. So I kept busy during the holiday seasons. I would live in my car from about 4 a.m. till maybe 11 p.m. And I would service maybe 10 to 15 clients all day long, several times a day, all Okaloosa County. And you remember how big the county is in this state of Florida. Yeah. So finally, after, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, my mechanic said he couldn't fix my car anymore simply because I refused to slow down for speed bumps as I was pet sitting throughout the day. Yeah, it was lovely. Absolutely. And now the industry, you can go online and hire a pet sitter, right? You don't have to have a business card or talk to your grocer or person at the bank. So if I were staying in business, there's a lot of competition. And I will tell you, some of the competition is very well-meaning and not very well educated as far as what's required taking care of a pet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that people would still rely on word of mouth. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable just hiring somebody. I would want to know that these people know, because these are our basically family members.
Sure they are. Yeah. Well, you could be a minority. I don't know. Because, they've got care.com and they've got scruffy.net and they've got who knows.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to have a reputable biography. But my feeling was, if you don't sit down with that person in the home with the animals and establish what kind of bond or not, it's hit or miss. So
Yeah.
I was never ever fired by the animal or the owner. So that's a good thing.
Well, just the fact that you can consider yourself fired by the animal, I think, is a good sign, because they also have an opinion in this matter.
Absolutely. I trained a lot of people to be better owners. I never wanted a pet to be a better pet. And people don't get that.
Yeah.
And they're not things, and they're beings that you have to respect and interact. So,
yeah.
But I have gotten older and more opinionated. Yeah.
What? You opinionated?
And the filter absolutely left when I turned a certain age. And I don't care what comes out anymore. It's your problem to hurt your feelings, not mine.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Ask me again. Go ahead.
This is one reason why Laura and I are good friends off show, like in regular life. Is there such a thing as regular life? But
no.
I do want to ask you, I think that there's a little bit of a misnomer in the phrase pet sitter, because it doesn't sound like you did actually a lot of sitting, like with all of that. Like if you wore your car out, I'm thinking there really wasn't a lot of sitting happening. What did you do as a pet sitter? Like what is the typical day as a pet sitter?
Walking in the door and getting through the door can be problematic. Having treats in pockets. Remembering the floor plan of the house I'm visiting, especially if it's several houses in one day. And reviewing the notes that the owners left and then throwing them in the trash, because that's not what the animal wanted to do anyway. So, the notes would say the dog needs out at 10 a.m. No, the dog doesn't want to be out at 10 a.m. They've already crapped on the floor waiting for me to get there, so they won't be going out again until maybe 1.
That's funny.
You find that animals will tell you exactly what your job is supposed to be, whether it's feeding, whether it's exercising. I have worked with hospice animals. I have worked one time with puppies, won't ever do it again. I have let animals generally on the furniture that they can get on, but sometimes they get on the furniture they're not supposed to get on. I had one cat that liked to live her life on top of the refrigerator, and I only stand 5'4". So that was interesting. I've had clients introduce me to some animals, and then I walk in the door and those aren't the same animals that are in the house. There are more animals. So the rabbits they didn't tell me about that I'm highly allergic to made an appearance, and I was supposed to care for the rabbits, but they neglected to mention they had rabbits. I always came prepared with extra food, water, leashes, collars, combs, flea medication, baths, shampoo, music CDs that would kind of calm them down. I got way too much exercise with some clients and not enough with others, which is fine. The worst of it was when the hurricanes came through and the people left, but the animals were staying behind.
Oh, wow.
So in the 100-mile-an-hour wind, my husband drives me from house to house on Christmas Eve, and we take care of the animals. And we have to put them in kennels, and we have to put them in rooms that are interior, and then not sleep all night long wondering if the animals will be alive, and then answering the text messages and phone calls from frantic owners. Are their animals okay? So we've done that. I've had a car full of animals taking them to emergency veterinarians because a snake bit them. My stories run from every possible scenario. I couldn't begin to tell you, Miss Angela, the amount of trouble I have had, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I wouldn't. As a matter of fact, I'd be lying if I said I am completely retired, because I have one client whose original pair died at 17, and they texted me last Christmas and said, we have 2 new ones, you can't retire. So I have one client left. Yeah, one client.
So in the case of, like, say, the rabbits, would you add that to the bill? Like, there was actually more animals here than expected, so.
I did. And they paid it.
That
But they
seems
didn't
fair.
hire me again. Yeah, they didn't hire me again because the secret was out.
Yeah.
But my pricing was not per animal, it was per household, because I would be driving a much better car now if I had priced my services per animal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started, the area that I lived in is bordered by very modest housing and people who struggle. And so they got me all day for $9. That was it.
Wow.
And it took me, I don't know, maybe 8 years when I jumped all the way to 25.
Wow.
Because, competition started charging at 40. That's what they were getting online, $40 per visit. And I have a sister-in-law who is also a pet sitter. She does out service and invites animals into her home. And she and my brother have not had a house to themselves in almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
But I do not do in-home. I have enough to take care of here. Yeah.
Oh, that does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here is one of my favorite questions to ask somebody on this show, because you have a different perspective that I don't have access to. So as a writer, I might be writing a horror story at some point where a pet sitter would, say maybe murder somebody or, anything like that. So if you were to murder somebody, hypothetically, of course, and if you feel like you might be revealing too much, feel free not to answer, but how would you do it as the pet sitter? If you were going to be like, the butler did it, the pet sitter did it, how would the pet sitter do it?
I would poison the food.
For the owners, not the pets, right?
For the owners.
Okay, good, because we don't want to kill pets, just owners.
No, just owners. I would poison the food, and then I would shave the hair off the victim and crochet a rug that I would hang on my wall of trophies.
Oh, interesting. So you
Hmm.
could be the rag rug murderer.
That's it.
Yeah, and then the police
Absolutely.
would be running around trying to figure out why are all the victims hairless.
That's it. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Other than that, I'm not too much into torture. I don't like screams or gore, perhaps. So how the heck we're friends, I don't know. But
Opposites attract.
opposites attract. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could set a trap and maim them. Maiming would be okay, but that's not really killing. That's just living with guilt. So yeah,
Yeah.
poison.
Now, I think I watched a show one time where they had the dog eat the owner as torture, and I was like, I have a dog that would probably do that. Chief would probably be like, yeah, I'll eat you if I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's it. My problem would be with the level of toxicity, because if I was mad enough at the owner to kill the owner, it wouldn't be good karma for the dog.
Yes, that is true. Yes, to eat them afterwards.
You have to eat them afterwards.
Well, you do have.
I was going to say, I could pack up the body parts and take them to the zoo where I volunteer and just sneak tidbits to the lions. So.
Yeah, and then they as they're sweeping up, they're like, "Does that look like a pinky to you?" And then probably just no, just don't ask.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to know what happened.
Nope. Good.
Well,
Next.
you do have plenty of stories that you have written about, though none of them murder necessarily. That's why I wanted to get that question in there. Tell me a little bit about the books that you've written. You have the pet sitting books, but you also have poetry books.
I do, and thank you for asking. And who's responsible for this journey?
I don't know. Probably a crazy person.
Yeah. She absolutely was. And I love her dearly, just so that you know that. I started as free verse poetry. That's my first love, because it's short and I have attention deficit disorder, so that works. And then I went into short stories based on my life as a pet sitter. And those books were birthed because I walked into a Books A Million and I found a book that said, chicken soup for the pet owner's soul. And so I opened the book and I started to read it. And it wasn't very well edited. And I said, I can do a better job. So to prove it, I started writing stories and self-editing. And if you ever find a grammatical error, that's on Grammarly, that's not on me. And from the short stories, I went into speculative fiction, which really made you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done memoirs, and I'm not going to do a biography. I think I'll probably go back to poetry. It's just the way I speak is more poetic than prosaic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And poetry leaves the reader's interpretation as the most important. I don't like telling people what to think necessarily, but I like to inspire people to think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I write.
Yeah,
And ta-da! Just uploaded my 13th since I met you.
Oh, nice. Congratulations. Which one is
Thank
this?
Yeah, like I can remember.
I guess after 13, it's like, I'll get the link from you. And when it'll be in the description.
Yeah, it was poetry.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So, well, are you going to be able to read for us today? That would be awesome. I always think hearing an author in their own voice is like where the magic really comes in with poetry or writing.
I can. I have a selection just in case you need extra time.
Yeah,
But
no,
they will all, yeah, they will all be from my series on pet sitting, since that is the topic of your show today.
Well, and I think we're going to have you on later, and I don't remember the date because I don't have it in front of me. But I think we're having you on later this year at some point for poetry, aren't we?
I think the day is called Doggus.
Yes,
August.
that's right. It is. It's August. August. Yep.
That's it. So that'll
Yep.
be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
I knew it
right.
was coming up. But yeah, let's hear you read.
Okay. I'll try not to block your view. I can't remember what page it's on. Oh, here's the front of my book.
Kiss on the nose. And all of this was original artwork too, which I find so impressive.
Oh, speaking of illustrators, I found my first one online. I contracted her, and she lives in England. And she did the first 2 books for me, and then she backed out and said I was keeping her way too busy. So, yeah, the 3rd book was illustrated by Terry Johnston. She is a well-known artist in the Blue Water and Niceville area of Florida. So she did the 3rd one.
That's beautiful.
So my story, and I'm going to take off my mask, so please forgive me, but I can't read through glitter. Hi.
Hi. There's that beautiful
Hi.
face.
Oh, love you too. I do. The ants go marching. Persons employed in the home pet care industry are, for the most part, good-natured, flexible, and conscientious. We bring with us a variety of experiences, and when among like-minded professionals, share and exchange bits of advice. In all my years, I met only one other pet sitter. Our meeting was strange in a sense because my client was her next-door neighbor. We'd pass each other several times in traffic and wave. She drove a van with painted advertisement on the doors. I drove a personal car with no exterior advertisement, but my animal-themed scrubs were a dead giveaway that I was either a veterinary tech, a groomer, or a pet sitter. Our town was rather close-knit. Someone whom you knew someone else, and eventually being recognized became the norm. Not that we all lived in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, but word of mouth was the best publicity gimmick possible. In all my years, I never spent money on advertising, and I topped my career with a clientele of more than 60 customers. I stopped by on a whim one day as I was caring for that particular neighbor's pet. Her home doubled as a dog training center. The living room had been converted into a gymnasium that one might expect to see in an equestrian training facility, except miniaturized. She eagerly showed me one of her own going through the paces. We exchanged hugs and business cards. I tucked her cards into my briefcase, overflowing with my own files for the day, and headed to another part of the city. Truthfully, in the other years when establishing my business, I would travel cross-country and sometimes cover a couple of 100 miles in a day. Especially at holiday time, my calendar runneth over and 15-hour days were the norm. But that's another story. This is a story about uninvited house guests. Max was a solid black Shih Tzu who lived in a 3-bedroom house in a cul-de-sac of a wandering neighborhood. There was no sense of system as far as streets. If you didn't have GPS, and I didn't, I wouldn't give 2 stars to the committee who planned that community. His house was so new that the paint was barely dry to indicate the house number on the curb. Forget reading mailboxes. The community had a community mailbox, a community pool, a community park. Well, you know what I'm saying. There was so much new construction, the traffic flow was squeezed between concrete mixers, flatbed, occasional porta potties. Max was wary of new people, wary of his leash, wary of his own shadow, totally un-Shih Tzu-like. Reading his body language was difficult because his ears lay back 24/7. Thankfully, I had the experience to know that a bath towel, carefully laid over him from the tail to the head, would calm him enough that I could pick him up. Trust is everything in this business. If you lose that, you might as well hand in your resignation. Walks became less scary. His fenced backyard was often the playground of feral rabbits. Max soon realized that his life was more than cowering in a corner and waiting for his people. Part of my business ethics was minimum housekeeping. I liked order and preferred to leave a client's home welcoming. I didn't mind an occasional sink of dishes or unattended trash can. Those were easy fixes. If my job was long-term, I would launder overflowing hampers and vacuum and dust. These eccentricities always assured a generous gratuity. I must explain that my several daily visits were not just run in and run out. I would stay as long as my schedule allowed, maybe an hour. I have another page. Are we good?
Yeah. I want to find out what happens.
All right. Max began to greet me at the door, ears still back, but tail tips swayed. He learned to associate my visits with meal times and walks. He knew that I would let him in his yard to chase bunnies and that he wouldn't be left in the dark at night. All was running smoothly well into the second week, until I opened the silverware drawer to get the can opener with a dozen. Where did they come from? They weren't there yesterday. I couldn't move fast enough. My first concern was Max. I grabbed him and put him into the bathroom behind closed doors. I rushed into the kitchen and searched the cabinets for ant spray, not to be found. I grabbed paper towels, wrung them out, and wiped the ants off the countertop. Luckily, I had found some rubber gloves, and pulling them on covered my several oozing blisters. I kept wiping the ants into oblivion. Max was scratching at the bathroom door, but I felt his imprisonment would be the least of my immediate concerns. I found the entry point to the parade of unwelcome house guests, found a tube of caulking, and filled the crevice. The parade stopped. I emptied the drawer of silverware into the dishwasher and started it. I emptied the cabinets below the drawer of all the contents and checked high and low for additional evidence. Nothing found. So I washed everything washable that I had removed and left on the counter to dry. I took off the gloves and counted the welts. Maybe 3. Taking my hand into the same bathroom that Max was in, I looked for the first aid. Nope, not there. My hand was throbbing. I called the client. She was very apologetic, told me where to find the peroxide ointment and bandages. Who knew? They were in the guest room bedside table. My hand, looking like a part of a bad Halloween costume, was burning hot and unusable. I had to pick up frightened Max once and hand carry him outside. Sorry, Max, no walk today. We got through the excitement. I went home, had my hand attended, and went back to tuck Max in. The next morning, I received a text message that the pest control technician would be there. Could I meet him? Well, yeah. So Max and I sat on the couch and watched the technician de-ant the kitchen. Going into the garage, he applied the poison to the other half of the entry point. He checked the other rooms and gave an all clear. Asking me if I was from the area, he said, yeah, with all this new construction, the ants gotta go somewhere. If I could have licked my paw, I would have, but I was Max's protector, and I felt he realized that everything would be okay. He kind of winked at me, which made his ears straighten up. which was a very good sign. The end.
Oh, that's a great adventure.
Yeah, that was my life.
Oh, that's awesome. And I just want to say, like, I would hire you as a pet sitter any day.
Oh, thank
I would consider
Thank-
that a steal, even at $25.
Yeah. Some days I miss it more than others. Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
So what I do in the meantime is I visit the local shelters and bring maybe one more home with me on occasion. At the moment, I have 5 dogs and a solitary cat.
So,
And the cat was rehomed by one of my clients to me. She's been with me now 10 years, so
oh wow,
it's a good fit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're kind of like a permanent pet sitter in your house.
I am a permanent pet sitter, yeah. And I continue to learn from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
They teach me a lot.
Well, that is why you are my go-to person every time there is an animal-themed event. I know who to call.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you read from A Kiss on the Nose, which
I do.
The listeners can find the link to in the description when this plays. And I appreciate you having you on, and I look forward to having you back.
All right, sweetie. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good day in Brazil.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.